Let me ask you guys a quick question. When engaging with visual novels, do you read them or do you play them? You can pause the video now or wait until the end of the video to answer this question in the comments below. If you were to ask multiple people if they considered visual novels to be games, I'm sure you'd hear some say yes and others say no. If you were to ask people why they thought visual novels were or were not games, you'd more than likely get various answers. Either opinion might be right or wrong depending on your views of the medium. While I believe visual novels have made their mark in interactive media, many people don't seem to give visual novels the flowers in that regard. Visual novels have existed since the 1980s and still stand the test of time. Many video games borrow visual novel-esque elements such as choice-based dialogue and branching story paths. You can look at Telltale's most popular game, The Walking Dead or The Wolf Among Us and Batman series. Another franchise that structures its games with these elements is the Don't Nod's Life is Strange series. Despite the widespread appeal of the games that I've listed, I've seen many on the fence about whether these games could be considered games or just interactive movies. Of course, I don't agree with the latter opinion, but it all depends on your view of the medium overall. Returning back to the video's title, we have to ask ourselves an important question to determine whether visual novels could be considered games. That question would be, what are the components that make a video game to you? Like many questions in this world, the answer will be determinant on who you ask. But if you were to ask me this question, here's how I'd break it down. There are two significant components that make video games what they are. Without these two things, I don't think you have much of a game. What are these two things, you may ask? Let me tell you. 1. The ability to control the player character, and 2. Mechanics and gameplay. We'll start with the first major component, control of the player character. Whenever you start a game, whether it be single player or multiplayer, you have control of the character or characters you'll be playing throughout the entire game. This can range from controlling which direction you're allowed to move the character, all the way to the physical actions that character can make with player input. For example, character combat abilities, using the character to interact with things in the world, etc. Sometimes you'll even be able to control what these characters can say in game. A lot of those actions could be classified as mechanics, but I'll explain why I separated them later. Player control is a core component of many games, and it is rare to have a game where you can't move the player character around or manipulate some form of action. How well do visual novels fare in this category? Let's take a look. If I'm being fair, I think it's very determinant of the visual novel you're engaging in. Many visual novels do not let you control the player character's movement like a traditional game, but some visual novels allow you to move to other maps whenever you'd like. This is still an aspect of player control, and it's very welcome when I come across these types of visual novels. A more vital element of player control that visual novels excel in is the ability to choose dialogue lines and make vital choices that can affect your relationship with other characters and the story's outcome. Even if this limited amount of control isn't your cup of tea, it's still a level of control that I believe falls into the category that I placed it in. Kinetic visual novels don't get a point in this category because in these types of novels, the only thing players have control over is menu settings. I know some people will say that controlling player characters would fit into gameplay, and I can honestly see why most would feel that way. I chose to separate this from gameplay because depending on the game you're playing, the control of player character tends to vary a bit. You don't have the same freedom of movement in getting over with Bennett Foddy like you would in something like Hollow Knight. Now, let's look at mechanics and gameplay. Most people associate game mechanics with gameplay, but I separate them. I view gameplay as the player's overall experience and how they choose to play a game. Mechanics are things built into the game, i.e. all the moving parts. Let me give you an example on what I mean by this. In Batman Arkham City, you can fight enemies, glide, unlock numerous tools, etc. These are built-in mechanics, but most people won't play the game the same way despite all these things. Some might prefer to avoid side missions and explore the city as much as they want. Some might look for goons and challenges to take down and rack up on XP to unlock new mechanics. You can choose to 100% complete the game or you don't have to. That's gameplay because it's your own experience that you can create. Let's bring it back to visual novels now. Doki Doki Literature Club, or DDLC for short, allows you to make poems. Specific word choices will improve your chances with the girl you aim for. An even more mechanical part of the game is being allowed to go into the game's files and tamper with them, specifically deleting character files to affect the events of the story. In terms of gameplay, DDLC is fine, but in terms of mechanics, it knocks it out of the park with no effort. There aren't many visual novels that does what DDLC does, and that's why the game is so successful and reach audiences that would rarely touch visual novels. In fact, I would argue that this is a story that could only be told in such a medium. So back to the title of this video. Are visual novels games? I'd say no if we're talking about kinetic visual novels. My answer is yes if we're talking about visual novels that fit the criteria I listed above. When you combine player control with gameplay and mechanics, you create an interactive medium, which is what video games are. There's more to video games than just delivering a story. Using player controls, built-in mechanics, and playing the game your way allows you to interact with the medium in ways you couldn't while reading a book or watching a TV show or movie. This interactivity gives video games their identity in the entertainment space. If you made it this far in the video, I want to give you my special thanks, and I appreciate you for sitting through this entire video. Do you consider visual novels to be games? Why or why not? I would really love to read your opinions in the comments below. Any comment you leave, I will read and I will respond to. Thanks for checking out the video again. Until next time.